Hi guys. Back in Romans, we are in chapter 13, starting verses 1 through 7 today. And so in this particular passage, Paul is talking about government authority, what we all love to talk about, right? At this point in time, this has got to be the very last thing that I want to talk about, but here we are, just moving right along. So Paul says, as Christians, we must be subject to governing authorities. And he tells us why. Because those who are in power were instituted by God. Now, this is hard to believe in some cases, is it not? But that's what it says. So Paul says there's no authority at all except from God. So you got a problem with who's in charge? Take it up with God because he put them there. He compares resisting and rebelling against government leaders as akin to rebelling against God himself. So this is almost outrageous, but it's the Bible, so here we are. There's a lot of outrageous things in the Bible, so just so you're clear on that. But Paul teaches that if one does right and does good, he will have no reason to fear the government authority. But if one does wrong, God will use the sword of the government authority and the leaders to bring wrath against you. So Paul goes so far as to call government authorities servants of God and uses it as a rationale as to why we must be subject to them. So he says, in so doing, we will avoid God's wrath and keep a clear conscience. Paul also mentions these facts as a basis for paying taxes, our next favorite thing, right? So he calls us to pay taxes, revenue, respect, honor to all of those in civil authority because they're acting as God's own ministers, Paul says. So I know what you're thinking. Paul's crazy, right? He didn't live in 2026 under an evil government. But the truth is that Paul wrote this letter to the Romans in the time of the most evil Roman leader of all time, Nero. Nero tortured and executed Christians for sport. He used their dead bodies as torches to light his gardens. So it doesn't get much more evil than that. So we can't really say that. We can't really say our government is worse than yours because I don't think so, at least not yet. Apparently, being subordinate to government authorities is mandated even when they aren't good people, right? Because the underlying theme remains, because none of this makes a whole lot of sense unless you put it in terms of God's ultimate purposes. And God's ultimate purpose for each and every one of us, first of all, he wants our trust. So we may not understand everything that goes on in the world, but we're not God, right? We're just humans. We're finite beings. God's doing lots of things on many fronts, and we may not understand it all or how it all fits together, but he wants our trust, number one, and he causes men and nations to rise and fall. That's what he's done from the beginning of the time, and his purposes are always for ultimate good. That's what we know for sure. So we may never understand the men that he chooses to rule over the world or who he instates as leaders over us, but we are called to believe that he is altogether sovereign over all things and all people and to trust him. And so that's my takeaway from this, even though I really didn't like doing this particular passage at this point in time. It's there and I go in orders so we don't skip anything. So that's my takeaway. I hope that's helpful and I hope you guys have a good day.